startup is not easy. There is one side to a startup, which is what the startup says it does. There is a bunch of interesting investors who have backed it. There is a bunch of really cool people working there. And that seems like it seems like a very Silicon Valley kind of a feel to it and so on. But then there is a next level, which is there is a lot that breaks down in a startup. There's a lot of pain and strife. There's a lot of pivots that happen along the way.
Hello and welcome all. I wish you all a very cheerful morning. I am Shaunak Punjabi, and along with Krishi Jain, I'm going to be hosting WebENT 1.0. WebENT 1.0 is an initiative by the E-Cell of KC College to organize webinars between our students and prominent entrepreneurs such as Mr. Dhyanesh Shah in a bid to encourage critical thinking skills and help students imbibe the traits that help set these individuals apart from the rest. This event would not have been possible without a beloved principal ma'am, Dr. Hemlata Bagla, our vice principals and our teachers, Dr. Ritika Pathak, Dr. Kulvinder Kaur, Dr. Kushnuma Tata. This event has been organized by the E-Cell of KC College. About E-Cell. The E-Cell of KC College is a student organization dedicated to encouraging students to become entrepreneurs. It gives all aspiring entrepreneurs a chance to learn about the business world and master skills required to operate a successful business venture. About the speaker.
So guys, let us welcome our speaker for today, Mr. Dhyanesh Shah. He is the co-founder of Mosaic Wellness, an innovative company that provides health and wellness solutions to Indian consumers. Being an alumni of IIM Ahmedabad, he also served as a principal with 8 roads for 6 years. This is a leading venture in private equity investments, not just in India, but in the whole of Southeast Asia. Furthermore, he has worked across India, Malaysia, and Singapore as an engagement manager at McKinsey & Company.
The passion he brings to every venture makes him such a successful founder and an idol to many in the entrepreneurial space. Hello, sir. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, guys.
Sir, so our theme for today is how to build your startup. Sir, so my only question to you is, how did you start your startup? How was the shift from an engagement manager at McKinsey & Company to an entrepreneur like?
And so I think the answer to this would be very different for a lot of different people. Because what happens is, if you see the profile of startups, the kind of founders who are there are very, very different, right? At one end of the spectrum, you could have, let's say, Oyo, where a 20-odd-year-old guy out of college, not even having completed his graduation, uske pehle he started and built such a successful business. You have the other end of the spectrum, let's say a Big Basket, where Harimanan started the company when he was 45 or 50 years old, and then built it into such a big and successful venture. So there is a whole different mix of people altogether who are doing this. I don't think there is actually one right way of doing it. To each their own. People have taken the extreme steps, like Ritesh at Oyo would be one extreme, Hari at Big Basket could be the other end of the extremity. I probably lied somewhere in between, where I worked for a while in different companies before starting this. This venture actually is in a way my fourth career, because I started in software at Oracle. I then moved to management consulting at McKinsey. I then moved into investing at 8 Roads before I started this venture. So I went through a stage where had 3 different careers before this. The transition has been very interesting. To your point, most people don't know, but I actually attempted one more startup in 2012, a long time ago. This is when I was with McKinsey. I took a sabbatical from McKinsey. I tried a startup. It was a very bad idea, which went absolutely nowhere. Shut it down in a couple of quarters or 3 quarters time, and moved back into doing what I was doing. And then again, after about 7 years, ventured back into starting up on my own. I think the transition is very stark, because my last two roles, both McKinsey and being a private equity investor, both of these are roles where you are, while you are working very hard with a particular company, at the end of the day, the final execution is done by that company and not you directly. Whereas once you start a company, a startup, and especially in the early days when teams will be thin, everything will be done by you. So the transition is actually quite stark from then to here. I would only say I was not massively taken by surprise for three reasons actually. First reason, I come from a family. I'm a Gujarati, and most of the people in my extended family are running some sort of small business or the other. So there is that little bit of familiarity of a non-corporate setup. Second, I had tried my own startup in 2012, which, while it went nowhere, at least gave me a bit of a reality bite कि छोटी company में life कैसे होता है. And third, because I spent 6 years with Eight Roads, which is a venture capital firm, I had the benefit of meeting with hundreds of founders and working closely with 5 or 6 of them. So again, while nowhere close to the pain and joy of running your own company, got some exposure there too. So hence, I think I was well prepared for what was coming my way. Even then, probably I didn't fathom the full extent of it, but that's how my experience has been, yeah, so far.
You spoke about your previous startup. Are you talking about SB Chemical?
That's right. SB Green Fuels is what we had called it
Yes.
at that point of time. Yes.
So what was that about? So we know what Mosaic is about. So could you tell us what was that about?
Sure. So this was 2011, 2012, when I would have been in my mid-20s or so. Again, given my ethnic background, I knew a lot of people in the Vapi area. And in the Vapi area, there are a lot of paper mills. These paper mills have a huge issue, which is they get their raw material packaged in plastic. And while they use the raw material to make their end paper, all this plastic collects and it becomes very large quantity, and it's a pollution hazard. So they get troubled a lot by the pollution control boards. They have to spend a lot of money to dispose this. What we had come up with is a concept, not a concept, actually a plant which could use this plastic and convert it into a low grade of fuel through a process called pyrolysis. And the aim was to set up a plant to do that, pick up this plastic from these paper mills and convert it into a value-added product like a low-grade fuel. This low-grade fuel could then be used in kilns and those kind of applications. That was the idea. I think the idea makes a lot of sense. We got screwed in execution. Did not really fathom the regulatory constraints that would be there around this, the challenges required to get approvals to set up something of this nature, because this is a significant industry. There's a lot of safety protocols that need to be proven, etc. And we didn't really get there, and that's where we got stuck. Okay? So we never got to a fully operational plant at that point of time, and hence had to shelve it and move forward back to doing what I was doing until I get a second innings.
So as we all know, you have an amazing journey till now. So as your journey includes IIM Ahmedabad, I would like to say that what was it like to pursue your MBA from IIM Ahmedabad?
So it was a lot of fun for me. I think the first thing that struck me about IIM Ahmedabad was it was my first time that I was living out of home. So I'm born and brought up in Bombay. I did my engineering from Bombay. So I've always been a day scholar all my life. So the first thing that hit me, which is not specific to IIM Ahmedabad, but the fact that I lived away from home for 2 years with a bunch of colleagues was a very different experience. And some of these guys, of course, are now very close friends of mine. So that was an immensely interesting experience for me. I really enjoyed the academic side of my MBA. I'm a bit of an academic geek, if I may confess. So I really enjoyed the academic side of it. The MBA at IIM Ahmedabad was actually very analytical. It's not very theoretical, hugely analytical, very case study oriented. That was something I really enjoyed. The biggest part was the cohort, actually, both the set of students and the set of teachers I was working with. Very, very exemplary. It's very interesting to be in an environment where you always get challenged by the others because the others are as good or better than you. And that was at a very different level in IIM Ahmedabad. So I really enjoyed that experience. If I could relive a certain part of my life all over again, I think that is the part I would choose over the last 38 years that I've been around on this planet. I think I would want to go back to B school if I could. So it was a great experience.
Such a prestigious school. It's a dream for all of us to get in. You got in. That's crazy. So moving on, like we've researched a lot about you. When I say research, I mean going through your LinkedIn profile again and again. I wanted to ask, is there something that you would like to tell us that we wouldn't know about your life at IIM or maybe with the startups?
Interesting question. So I think the part which gets missed is I think the profile seems very it seems like, oh, this is all so interesting, right? Okay, gone from A to B to C, all are good names, and you got a startup and it's well funded and there are good VC funds around and so on. I think the part this hides, and probably by design, because a LinkedIn profile is a marketing tool. At the end of the day, you're marketing yourself there, right? I think it just hides the amount of chaos and the amount of I don't know what's the right word for it, but maybe pain and effort that it takes to grow into each of these things. A startup is not easy. There is one side to a startup, which is what the startup says it does. There is a bunch of interesting investors who have backed it. There is a bunch of really cool people working there, and that seems like it seems like a very Silicon Valley kind of a feel to it, and so on. But then there is a next level, which is there is a lot that breaks down in a startup. There's a lot of pain and strife. There's a lot of pivots that happen along the way. I think those parts obviously are very selfishly left out of a LinkedIn profile. But that's what, like, even if I go back to my startup in 2012, I think it was quite heartbreaking, right? You put in 9 months and you're just finally putting a lock on that door and moving on in life. It feels terrible. And even now at Mosaic Wellness, while the company is doing amazingly well, I'm really happy for it, touch wood. There's enough that goes on below the hood, which just doesn't come out, and is the reality of any startup. So obviously a lot of you here are aspiring to be in startups or start your own venture some point in the future. And I think the key takeaway for me is that a startup is actually not, you should never be in a startup because it's going to be a cool thing to do, or it's a very great experience, or you're going to wear a hoodie and move around like the Facebook founder. That is actually a very fangled idea of a startup. A startup is actually it's not easy. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of sacrifices. And there is huge upside, of course. You will learn a lot. You will move a lot faster up in life. But to be very conscious of that is what I would say is the biggest takeaway for me.
That eliminated my next question, which was, do you wear hoodies and move around the airport with a glass of with a Starbucks cup? So
I don't, but a lot of our people do, and that's okay. That's okay. But the point I'm trying to make is, while they do that because it makes them comfortable, that is not a core of what a startup does. A core of what a startup does is you challenge a traditional way of doing things. Why does a startup exist today? So there are enough corporates out there. There are enough large corporates which are worth billions and billions of dollars who have been around for 100 years. The reason a startup like us can exist is because we are challenging a status quo and saying, "Aise nahi karna chahiye. Things should be done in a different way, leveraging some different angle." The fact that you are challenging a status quo means you are taking a hard path. Always status quo is the easy part to execute. If you say, nahi, aise nahi karna hai, we should do it in another way. When you try to do it in the other way, 100 things will fail. There will be 100 good reasons why your other way is not going to succeed. And then you'll have to pick up each of those 100 reasons and solve for them one by one by one. Many of those are going to be very hard nuts to crack. So that is what I think a startup is all about. You might wear a hoodie in the process, but it doesn't change the difficulty of what you know. What is the biggest problem with this hoodie image? There's nothing wrong with the hoodie image. It makes it seem like things are very easy in a startup. That's the biggest problem with that image. Actually, things are very difficult, which is again absolutely fine. It should be, by definition, has to be difficult. Otherwise, to sab kar lete na. But I think anyone who's getting into starting a company should be very conscious about this element of a startup as such.
So, sir, I'm curious about one thing. Like when you coming to startup, when did the thought of starting digital healthcare clinics came from? Like, why healthcare? Starting up by healthcare, you choose.
So Krishi, for me, actually, the last 10 to 12 years, I've been doing significant work on healthcare. When I was at McKinsey, I worked with a few healthcare and consumer clients. Even at 8 Roads, when I joined there for the last 6 years, I spent a lot of time in doing investments in healthcare and consumer health. One of the good things you do as an investor is you get a very nice bird's eye view of the whole landscape. And you get a view of the landscape both here, and you also look at global trends. And what I saw was that in India, actually around the world, but more so in India, healthcare is very broken. We are in a place where doctors are revered, and effectively consumers go through any amount of pain to get a treatment from a doctor. And pura system hi waisa hai. Like, I mean, most of us would be familiar, right? You're going to go to visit a specialist, who aapko 1 ghanta bithayega. Then you will be taken into a scrawny room. He'll probably talk to you, or she will talk to you for a couple of minutes, then write something that you cannot even read properly. And you will go to a chemist and buy that. And that's probably the last you've seen of that doctor. You're probably not going to go back. And beyond a few days, you'll stop using those products because it's not going to be top of mind recall for you. And what happens is everything which is not super critical, everything which is not going to kill you, if I may put it that way, will start taking a backseat. आप छोड़ दोगे, आप कुछ नहीं करोगे उसके बारे में. And all of these areas should effectively move to what I would call consumer healthcare, where you solve those problems, but in a very consumer-centric way versus in a doctor-centric way. It's a very large opportunity. In fact, these markets are massive in the US, in Europe, etc., in developed markets where consumers kind of take healthcare decisions into their own hands. India में traditionally होता नहीं. Even if you have to pop a basic vitamin C tablet, chances are you will ask your doctor, okay, should I take this or not? So very different context. Our view was this will happen in India. Given it is happening so late, the good thing about anything happening late in India is chances are it will be digitally disrupted versus going through the traditional channels. And whenever you come into something which is digitally disrupted, us as a startup would always have a good edge over the incumbents. So I have a level playing field with a lot of very large companies out there. And that was the whole thought behind why we got into this space when we started this business in end of 2019, early 2020.
It is better to go on your page and ask doctors for advice than going on Google and searching, "Ki, I have this symptom and what must have happened to me."
Oh, absolutely agree, yaar. And unfortunately today, a lot of people do that. And ठीक है, कर सकते हो. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just it's a very risky way of trying to get real advice, because you cannot give context to Google. No? You can tell Google a question in text and Google will probably do a reasonable job of replying to it, but there is no context to that question. Medicine is all about context. If I am asking something to a doctor, chances are before giving me an answer, वो मुझे दूसरे 5 सवाल पूछेगा, and then he will or she will give me a particular answer. Okay, this is what you think you should do. So Google is probably not well suited to solve that at this point of time. And I would rather, what we are trying to solve is how do we use technology to solve it, using a bunch of doctors, using telemedicine, versus relying on the traditional setups.
So you speak of using other doctors, using other traditional setups. My question to you is that you yourself are not from a medical background. Why did you think of something like this? Like, how did you arrange for the medical pills, the dawai? Like, how did it all come into play?
Yeah. So yes, I don't have a medical background, but I've been involved in healthcare for the last 10 years. One of the advantages of being a bit of an outsider is only an outsider challenges the status quo. So it will be very rare to see a doctor who says, at least pre-COVID, let me go back pre-COVID, abhi to sab bolte hain, but very rare to find a doctor pre-COVID who will say, I'll make telemedicine big. Most doctors would say, अरे ये क्या बकवास है, ये तो हो ही नहीं सकता, etc. But look at today, right? Obviously, when we started in end of 2019, we did not anticipate COVID, but look what COVID has done, right? Today, every super specialist is also consulting using telemedicine. So I think it takes outsiders to challenge the status quo. It's like this, right? If I take an example of college, right? Every time in a college, if the top management changes, let's say there's a new principal who comes from outside or something, immediately some changes get implemented because the person comes with fresh ideas. Right or wrong, wo baat alag hai, right? You could argue that people will make changes which are suboptimal, etc. But whenever you get new people, you get changes. So I think it's actually okay to be an outsider. What is not okay is to be an outsider and remain an outsider. So you can start as an outsider, but then you have to become an insider. So today, now we have a team of several doctors in the company who are working on this with us. So today we have about 120 doctors who work with us today full time, solving for this, including a few very senior doctors who spend a lot of time on this side of the business. So in any startup, actually, the reality is you as a founder or a set of founders will very rarely cover every skill set between them. You should cover a certain core set of skill sets and then quickly move on to finding the right talent in the senior team to solve for some gaps that exist. As long as you're conscious of the gaps and filling for it, I think that's totally fine.
So, yeah, go on, Sean.
No, you should carry on.
So, what's a piece of advice or a tip you would like to give to all the aspiring entrepreneurs coming out nowadays? All the young entrepreneurs.
I mean, so many things I can say, not one, but I've mentioned, I think if you are to do a startup, do one for the right reasons, which is the wrong reasons would be just being enamored by the concept of a startup. The right reasons would be being very well aware that this is a hard path to choose, but you are ready for it. You want to build, you have the ability to build and comprehend this, and you want to go ahead on that hard path, in which case it's the right thing to do. What are some of the things I would advise to people? So I would say get the right founding team in place, find great co-founders. A startup is a very lonely journey. Without the right people on your side, it's going to be very hard. Find the right set of co-founders, find the right set of advisors, and make them part of your team early on. Don't try to do it alone. Again, there are examples of people who done it alone and done well. So this is not to say that it's not possible, but I just think you would stack the odds against you. So I would say the first thing to do is get a good founding team in place before you venture into this. I think the second thing to think very carefully about is time this well. And what do I mean by time it well? I don't mean time it against, jab market mein funding ki hawa chal rahi hai, etc. That's not what I mean. I mean, time it well to your personal situation. So make sure that you are okay financially for the near term without any cash flows coming to you. Make sure that your family is comfortable ki chalo, you're going to do this, the next 2 years are going to be hell. You're not going to contribute financially to the family in all likelihood in that period of time. You are personally ready for it from a skill set perspective, which is very important. Like, for example, for someone like a young graduate coming out of a college like yours, you could theoretically have three options, right? You could A, take a job in a larger company. B, you could join another startup. And C, you could start your own startup. I don't think any of these three is a wrong answer. Like there's that tends to be that feeling, अरे startup नहीं चालू किया तो क्या किया? I don't think that's really valid. You can time this. You don't have to do it first thing out of college. You may choose to, which is a perfectly fine thing to do, but you don't have to. There should not be an undue pressure कि अरे मुझे तो नौकरी नहीं करनी कम वक्त में. I would say go and join a great startup, spend 2 years there, learn the ropes, and then do something on your own. So time this fairly from a personal point of view. What is a really bad outcome is you get into a startup and it's personally a bad time for you to take that kind of a challenge. You could have a personal challenge at home. It could be financial. It could be your skill sets not being really developed fully. Your networks not being developed fully. So that's the second advice I would give, which is time it. Don't just do it for the sake of it first thing. The third thing I would say is team. If you are to do a startup, get a strong initial team in place. I mean, the non-co-founding team. Very critical, because at the end of the day, one or two people are not going to make the difference. You're going to have a bunch of really good people who have to come together to make the difference. So that becomes extremely critical. Fourth, I think, is figure out how you network with the right folks. See, at the end of the day, a lot of success will be driven by being at the right place at the right time. But the reality is, being at the right place and at the right time is not serendipity. It's actually not luck. There is actually a science to being in the right place at the right time. And the science is that you need to know the people who tell you what is the right place and the right time. And how you know that is by knowing the right people. I'm not talking here about, going around and schmoozing or so on and so forth. I'm saying more, if you know who are the folks, like let's say, if I look at my business, we are today selling on a number of platforms. Am I well networked with those platforms so that I get all the due help and favors required? I'm not talking about undue favors, I'm talking about due favors from those folks. Hiring is such a big deal linked to networking. Today, if I know a bunch of good people, they would in turn refer me back to other candidates who they know. In fact, one of my asks for doing this session, I told Prashant, who had contacted me, that boss, I need resumes and really good people to join the company, really smart freshers who are there. So all of this is a give and take linked to networking. So that is something I would say is super duper important as someone getting into a startup. The fourth thing I would say is be very flexible on the business. Okay. And what I mean by be very flexible is not ki don't have a solid business plan. The reality is, ab kuch bhi kar lo, when you finally go to the market and launch a particular product or service, you will learn a lot of things have gone wrong. Irrespective of how well you planned it. Irrespective. Ab kuch bhi kar lo, a lot of things will go wrong. At that point, you have to be very flexible and agile to say, ye nahi chal raha hai, isko band karo, ya isko tweak karo, ya isko change karo, or whatever else, and move to the next thing. That is critical. So what you should not do is make a blueprint, frame it, and put it on your wall and say, abhi ye hum agle 3 saal mein ye banayenge. You'll have to actually make a blueprint, make sure you don't frame it, and have a big eraser and a pencil available at all points to keep changing that and moving around. That mental preparedness कि boss ये सब change होने वाला है, कोई problem नहीं है, is very important on day zero. I see a lot of companies who go in on day zero with a certain plan and then stick to it and don't change. And what I find most unfortunate, a lot of people label it as perseverance. I don't think it's perseverance. I think it's actually rigidity. Perseverance is staying on it and making the startup succeed, but it need not be with the same plan that you started with. But those are some of the things that I think are kind of very evergreen in a startup succeeding or failing, per se. I mean, this list could go on, right? Like I could talk about it forever on my personal learnings on what worked quite well and what didn't, per se. But these are some of the things on top of my mind that I would want to really keep on top of my mind.
So we'll surely imbibe all these in our aspiring entrepreneurs. We'll surely tell them to imbibe all these 4 skills you said about. Yeah.
So as you said that अगर ऐसा लगे कि funding की हवा चल रही है, so I wanted to ask, like, how do you feel about the startup sector in India? How is the startup ecosystem doing in India? What do you?
Yeah, very loaded question. Yeah, so I think what is great is there is a real economy emerging among startups today. I mean, I keep discussing this with my parents, who are always very confused in my life mein kar kya raha hu. But and I was just explaining to them yesterday actually over dinner, where they were kind of saying, what is all this startups, etc. And I was just telling him that, boss, look at your life today. You stopped consuming newspapers. You are consuming everything digitally, on WhatsApp. Your entire communication with all your network has moved to digital, email, WhatsApp, etc. Your entire purchasing pattern has moved to Amazon. My parents are expert shoppers on digital sites. हमारे घर में किराना आता है बिग बास्केट से. My house has got a Amazon Kindle, Amazon Fire Stick, and a Alexa device, which is used. They use Uber and Ola excessively on everything. I was like, what are you talking about? Your entire life has moved to being fed by these startups. All of these did not even exist. And I'm not even mentioning the 100 apps which are there on their phones, which they use for various other things, right? So the reality is our life is massively disrupted by startups in a way we cannot even imagine. Like 10 years back, none of this was there. Many of you would have been actually very young 10 years back. But for someone like me, like 10 years back, I would have been in my mid to late 20s. The change is very, very, very stark. And the reality is this change will get only more stark over time. So the interesting thing is that there is a real change happening and there is a massive economy getting created. Now the question is, who will capture this pie? Who will get this economy? Some of it will go to the old school guys. Some of it will go to startups. That mix we will have to see over time. The great thing is, by definition, startups need to be very agile, move fast, etc., which puts them at a very strong advantage compared to, let's say, larger corporates who are trying to also now capture this pie. I mean, of course, the Tatas and the Birlas of the world also want to now be part of this ecosystem. Why not, right? Everyone needs to, and they will also, in a very successful way. They will find a different approach to it than maybe what startups like us will. But all of them will. So I think the opportunity is very real. The funding environment obviously is very hot. And the reason it is very hot is twofold. A, the opportunity I spoke to you about, it's not a secret IP with me. Everyone sees this. And second, now we have a really great startup ecosystem in India. There are a bunch of really good companies. There are a bunch of really good professionals who are driving this. There are great teams. People are choosing to take this up as a career versus just going for higher education or moving abroad and so on. Real businesses are getting built. Like 5 years back, जब इतना startup पे हवा चल रहा था, it was unclear कि how transformative will this be to people's lives. Now it has been established because all our lives have moved to this. So I didn't even mention Swiggy and Zomato, which are just such a core element of our lives. And then there are so many of such more, right? So I think the wave is real. Now the question to ask is, who will capture the pie? And there, what we will see is some startups will wildly succeed and many of them will fail. That dichotomy will probably continue to happen and continue to remain, which is why as investors, there's always a big push to find the next really fast-moving company out there versus being more spray and pray.
I think I have been asking you too many questions. Do you mind if we take some questions from the audience?
Yeah, of course, not a problem at all.
Till we get a few. So you said that Mosaic is well established and अच्छा चल रहा है. Would we be seeing you in any other startup? Anything you're working on?
नहीं यार, one is taking up too much of my time right now. So I don't think I will be doing another startup for the foreseeable future. That said, us at Mosaic Wellness, we are running a lot of initiatives, so a lot of pods where there are new things, new business lines we will be launching. So that does not cease to like in a startup. The interesting thing I'm now noticing is very quickly you have to move into a bit of a hunter farmer model, where when we started everything was 0 to 1, very early stage. Now some of those lines have become very sizable, so those are moving into a mode where we are now trying to more fine tune and scale them, because we know what is to be done. But then there are new things which are coming up, जो एकदम 0 to 1 है, which are very in its infancy. So those are operating like day zero startups. The rest of the company is operating like a day 1 or a day 10 startup. And that dichotomy is what we are seeing, and most startups would go through this phase. So you will see from within Mosaic a lot of new initiatives, new products, services coming out. But yes, I don't think you will see me launching another startup per se, Shaunak, in the near future. I wish I had the time, but no.
I think Prashant wants to ask a question.
Good morning, sir.
Hey, Prashant.
Yeah, so I had a question. Like you just said that Mosaic will make more products, right?
Yeah.
But like when we were researching about your company, Mosaic has two bodies in it. One is Man Matters and other is Body Wise, right? So why did you guys go in two different directions instead of taking one company and catering to all of them single-handedly?
Sure. So our thesis here has been, if you see traditional brands out there, right? Most brands are built on categories. So what a category means is, you can say, shampoo is a category, or hair care is a category, or skincare is a category. So like, I mean, Sunsilk is a phenomenal brand, right? Sunsilk is a great brand. It's a pure play shampoo brand. The reason brands are built category first is they are all built around ATL advertising. And in ATL advertising, you would effectively make a brand visible and available to everyone. So you want everyone to be a potential consumer. And the way you would also sell these products is you would go through offline shelves as the primary mode of selling, and offline shelf space is very finite. If you think of a brand being digital, right, you would question as to why should a brand cater to everyone? Why should a brand not be very focused on one subsegment? And the advantage of being focused on the subsegment is you can fine tune your product offering to that subsegment. So what I use today as a product for myself or a service for myself need not be the same as what you guys who are in your probably early 20s or so need to be using, right? Or what I use need not be same as what women use. Everyone has a very different requirement, and the traditional world actually forces people to average out requirements and give an average solution. And I say average not because it's bad. I say average because it is the average requirement of a different set of people. What we are trying to do is we should not be doing that. Let's make brands which cater to very specific needs of a specific target segment and cater to that. The benefit of being digital first is shelf space is infinite, and I have enough tools through digital marketing to reach out to my target segment versus trying to go broad to everyone. So that has been the thinking. It's very counterintuitive because traditionally every brand has been built the other way around. So it's the first time we're trying to build brands this way. Time will tell. The early success seems like this is working quite well, but time will tell how we do this over time.
So I have another question. Sorry, guys. I have another question. Right? You guys started in the ending of 2019, right?
Yeah, we started the company end of 2019. We launched our products and services in May of 2020.
And you recruited a lot of people. So how do you make all of these new people work together for a single goal? Like, of course, the salary is one of the factors, but how do you change their mindset for working towards this goal as their own goal?
Yeah, good question, and very hard. I think very hard to do this. I don't think there is one silver bullet to doing this, but there are several small things one can do to make this happen. I think the first part is just setting the goals and the values and the behaviors of the company. So for us today, values and behaviors of the company are actually set in stone. We've written it down on a piece of paper. It is available to everyone in the company that this is what we are doing as a company. This is what we are solving for, and this is how we need to each behave and hold ourselves to make it happen. We keep reinforcing this in every discussion. We do town halls where we talk about this. All our recruitments, when even before people have joined us, we talk about this. So that top down, that communication has to be absolutely clear to everyone that this is what we are doing and this is why we are doing it and this is how we will go about it. So it's a lot of consistency, repeating the same message again and again and again. Sometimes it can seem a little irritating almost, but I think it's important because otherwise these things get lost. The second thing which is very important is incentivization. So we actually don't want any employees in the company. We want owners in the company. We want everyone to behave like an owner of the company and not someone who's here for a 9-to-5 job. There are 2-3 ways of doing this. Again, no silver bullet, but 2-3 ways of doing this. A, clearly have specific goals and tasks assigned to each individual. So everyone in my company has a specific target that they're taking, that they're working towards. No one is working like, call it, randomly, averagely towards कि मैं कुछ कर दूंगा. Everyone has very specific goals and targets that they are working towards. Second, everyone is empowered to execute against their own goals and targets. So what should not happen is कि आपको ये काम दे दिया है, but you don't have the tools and the resources and the empowerment needed to make that happen. And the third is we've actually made sure that more or less everyone in the company is an equity owner in the company. So we made a large ESOP pool. Everyone in the company is part of that ESOP pool. So everyone is effectively a shareholder in the company. This is crucial because without being a shareholder in the company, it's very hard to tell people, yeah, have a owner mindset, but you don't have any owner upside. That's very theoretical. आप ज्ञानबाजी कर सकते हो कि you should have owner mindset, ये वो, etc. But why would people actually behave that way? So we made a large ESOP pool and made sure that most folks in the company have significant ownership, which will lead to outsized outcomes for them. And they are thinking of it like their business. It is their business. They are as much a shareholder in the company as I am, or my co-founder is, or any of our investors are. And that's also really helped. So I would say, Prashant, I can't think of one, single way of doing it, but each of these things, one by one, is something that's helping. Yeah.
Sir, that's great. And actually, even here in our college, in our group, in the ESL, we are trying to implement the same, and I think we are doing a good job. People, are we doing a good job? I mean, okay, that's concerning. Nobody's happy. Okay, thank you, sir. Like that was all our questions. Anybody else has a question? Yeah. Abbas Sayed has a question. As a startup, there has been a new wave. Almost every type of fields have startups. So new fields are like next to impossible to found. So is there any chance that one startup can survive by applying the existing ideas, like making it efficient?
What does field mean? I didn't really understand this.
Field means, I guess he's saying health tech ho gaya, fintech ho gaya, edutech ho gaya, and tech. I mean, जो normal tech होता है वो भी हो गया. सब तो cover हो गया ना अब. तो क्या हम लोग इसके अंदर ही सेम आइडिया से लेके जा सकते हैं और उसको एफिशिएंटली अप्लाई करते हैं?
So yeah, I think couple of things here. So first is actually there is no startup who operates in ed tech or in health tech. Everyone operates in a small segment within that. Like ed tech may there might be 1,000 companies, but out of those 1,000, they might be operating on 20 different things. Like someone might be doing ed tech में कैट प्रेपरेशन का कुछ कर रहा है, कोई कुछ कर रहा होगा फॉर जेई, कोई कुछ कर रहा होगा स्कूल के लिए, कोई कुछ कर रहा होगा एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलर्स के लिए, कोई कुछ कर रहा होगा ed tech focused on underperforming students. Someone will be doing, like there is like so much of nuance कि ऐसा कभी नहीं होता कि there is no space left. If we fast forward 3 years, okay, and at the end of the next 3 years, if we look back, I am sure we will find 100 wildly successful startups which would have been started in the last 3 years who picked up a niche that was not so easy to find. So by the way, I'm not saying it's easy to find niches. It's damn hard. It's very hard. But I refuse to believe that niches don't exist. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, but they exist. One of the ways of finding a niche is actually what is mentioned. I think you kind of answered your own question. यार ऐसा कभी नहीं होता कि स्टार्टअप में आपको एकदम लाइफ ट्रांसफॉर्म कर देनी है. Like it's totally broken and you move day zero say to a system which is like unbelievable. Even if you are improving one particular element considerably, and the important part is the element you are improving should matter to the customer. So you have to be very close to the customer, talk to the customer. I'm making this up, totally stupid one, but let's say someone says ki when shared taxi started, someone says कि the whole problem is these taxis look hideous, तो मैं white paint करके beautiful white taxis available करवाऊंगा. That person has made a change, but it's probably a change that doesn't matter to the consumer. The consumer probably says कि मुझे taxi के अंदर comfort चाहिए. I'm making this up. Maybe there are other problems that the consumer wants to solve for, but he says मुझे taxi के अंदर smell नहीं आनी चाहिए, clean होना चाहिए, AC should work, etc. So you can change one or two elements also, and that by itself can make you wildly successful. But make sure those one or two elements are the ones that the customer is willing to care about. That is all you need to do. You need not go and transform the world. We are not in a revolution. We are actually, see, a startup is also just a business like anything else. And it has to, basically you have to, why does a business succeed? A business succeeds because what you are offering is being found valuable by a certain sizable set of the population. That is where a business succeeds. कि अगर मैं कुछ बना के दे रहा हूँ product or service in the existing market, out of all the people who are selling a similar product or service, the consumer finds value in my offering. Now, why will the consumer find value in my offering? Maybe I'm doing something better. I'm making a tweak which is really mattering to them. Maybe I'm just giving the lowest cost solution, and I'm using tech to make my cost lower than everyone else. That is a possibility. Maybe I'm making it far more convenient. बाकी लोग आपको जाना पड़ता है, मैं आपके घर पे पहुंचा देता हूँ. Maybe it's something else. Like there is infinite levers available. So you need not transform. You pick up one area, but वो one area you pick wisely.
Sure, I got it. Okay, sir. That's, I think we
I
have
think-
enough of
I think you
questions.
answered-
Yeah. Now, let's
I
go.
think
Yeah.
I think you answered my next question also. I wanted to use a quote that was, it's not about the idea, it's making the ideas happen. And I think you explained that, like it's finding the needle in the haystack and working on it and finding what to do and approach the consumers. Like customer is king. You also mentioned something similar to that. So that was all from our end. I would like to propose a formal vote of thanks. Thank you, sir, for coming and having this session, such an interactive session with us. It was really fun. I hope all of us have anything to say, sir.
Shaunak, I guess there's a technical glitch here. Okay. So, Shaunak, are you there?
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. I couldn't for the last 30 seconds, but now I can.
Yes, can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, you're audible.
I was just saying, sir, thank you so much for coming. It was a very interactive session. We really had some fun. I wanted to ask the teacher. I guess. Yeah.
Shaunak, you are lagging, right? So,
Can you guys hear me? Sorry, I'm so sorry. There's some network issue.
Hmm.
I wanted to ask the teachers, ma'am, do you have anything to say?
I think we have a technical issue here, and
I think ma'am can't hear us.
I think okay, we will have to end it here. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, guys. Very nice being here.